must delight in each other, make others' conditions our own, rejoice together, mourn together, labor and suffer together, always having before our eyes our community as members of the same body. The Puritans were not uninterested in material prosperity, and were prone, when it came unfortunately, to take it as a sign of God's approval. Yet their fundamental criterion of success was not material wealth, but the creation of a community in which a genuinely ethical and spiritual life could be lived. During his 12 terms as governor, Winthrop, a relatively rich man for those days, devoted his life to the welfare of the colony, frequently using his own funds for public purposes. Near the end of his life, he had to step down from the governorship because his neglected estate was threatened with bankruptcy. The Puritan settlements in the 17th century can be seen as the first of many efforts to create utopian communities in America. They gave the American experiment as a whole a utopian touch that it has never lost, in spite of all our failings. For Winthrop, success was much more explicitly tied to the creation of a certain kind of ethical community than it is for most Americans today. His idea of freedom differs from ours in a similar way. He decried what he called natural liberty, which is the freedom to do whatever one wants, evil as well as good. True freedom, what he called moral freedom, in reference to the covenant between God and man, is a liberty, to that only which is good, just, and honest. This liberty, he said, you are to stand for with the hazard of your lives. Any authority that violates this liberty is not true authority and must be resisted. Here again, Winthrop perceives an ethical content to be the central idea of freedom that some other strands of the American tradition have not recognized. In like manner, Winthrop saw justice as a matter more of substance than of procedure. Cotton Mather describes Winthrop's manner of governing as follows. He was indeed a governor who had most exactly studied that book which, pretending to teach politics, did only contain 3 leaves, and but 1 word in each of those leaves, which word was moderation. When it was reported to him during an especially long and hard winter that a poor man in his neighborhood was stealing from his woodpile, Winthrop called the man into his presence and told him that because of the severity of the winter and his need, he had permission to supply himself from Winthrop's woodpile for the rest of the cold season. Thus, he said to his friends, did he effectively cure the man from stealing. The freemen of Massachusetts did not always appreciate Winthrop's leniency, for it made it seem that there was no law but the governor's will. He was voted out of office and quietly served in minor posts for several years before being recalled to leadership. Petty leaders in far-flung colonial outposts have not always taken demotion with such equanimity. Winthrop accepted the procedural principles of self-government, enough to temper his own preference for magnanimous, if personal, substantive justice. If our whole destiny is not quite contained in Winthrop, as Tocqueville thought, something very important about our tradition nonetheless derives from him and from his fellow Puritans. The founding generation of the American Republic produced so many individuals exemplary of the Republican tradition that it is hard to choose among them. George Washington seemed to his contemporaries like some figure out of the early Roman Republic. Though he would have preferred to live quietly on his country estate, Washington responded to his country's call to be commander-in-chief of the Revolutionary Army and, later, first President of the United States. After graduating from Harvard College, John Adams of Massachusetts, a descendant of the Puritans, devoted his talents as a young lawyer to the constitutional defense of the rights of his fellow colonists, and subsequently to the revolutionary cause. Thomas Jefferson, 1743 to 1826, however, as author of the Declaration of Independence and leader of the popular cause, stands out as a particularly appropriate example of Republican thinking. Jefferson came from the planter class of West Virginia. After graduating from William and Mary College, he early took an active part in the politics of the Virginia colony. At the age of 33, he drafted the Declaration of Independence, and with the words, "All men are created equal," gave enduring expression to his lifelong commitment to equality. Jefferson did not believe that human beings are equal in all respects. By equality, he meant fundamentally political equality. No man